Well, if it's Sunday, it is Meet the Press, and we are fortunate enough to be joined by the moderator of that program, our good friend Chuck Todd. Chuck, thanks for joining us again.
Happy to do so, Nick.
Chuck, since we last saw you on Texoma Politics, now we've seen a lot from 2 Democratic debates to 2 mass shootings, and I want to focus on those mass shootings. We just heard from Texas State Senator Pat Fallon saying evil has no color. Now, you and the Meet the Press and MTP Daily panel have discussed and analyzed mass shootings like those in Dayton, Ohio, and here in El Paso. Does the senator make a valid point or not?
Well, sure. I mean, on one hand, yes, evil doesn't know that, but I do think that to pretend that the motive doesn't matter here, that we sort of ignore the motive, I think, doesn't. It sort of feels as if we're putting blinders onto a problem that we ought to worry about that as well. I mean, I think the thing is we treat the gun issue as an or problem, meaning it's either this or that or this or that, when perhaps we could try an approach that says, okay, for instance, I heard the conversation on red flag laws. Red flag laws are a terrific way to prevent suicide. That doesn't mean it does anything on a mass shooting, but that doesn't mean you throw away the idea. But that doesn't, but don't make it an or. Well, we're only going to do red flag or the background checks. And then when you say background checks, there's a lot of different ways that could get written. When you see the assault weapons ban, there's a lot of ways that can get written. I think the struggle that we've seen here in Washington is that there are too many partisans that decide it's an or. I go back to my initial construction. They look at it as an or issue. We're going to treat it as a mental health issue or a gun issue. Well, perhaps we ought to say it's both. It's all of it.
Well, since those shootings, gun control, as you know, has been a big conversation piece for Democratic candidates. Beto O'Rourke, specifically from El Paso, has been at the front lines. But what do you think the poll numbers are showing him?
Well, here's what we've seen. And I think why this does feel as if we're continuing to, I think, be on a path toward a different relationship with guns in this country. And here's what I mean. The polling is shifting, there's no doubt. There's almost no difference now between a Democrat and a Republican on the issue of expanding background checks. That's number one. The second thing we've seen is it's politically now more effective to be in a suburban population and be for gun control than against it. A Republican strategist told me a couple weeks ago that 2018 was the first time where they realized the gun issue was working against them, even in suburban Republican districts. So I do think the politics of this is changing. It's going to take a lot longer for that to lead, I think, to the changes to be seen in legislation. But I think you're seeing a movement in that direction. The Republican Party now is divided on this, essentially on geography. If you are from a more urban or suburban area, you are more likely to be for gun control as an elected Republican. And if you're from a more rural area, you're less likely. But the party now is sort of split in two on that issue, while Democrats are the party that's united on the issue.
And I know we could talk about this for a long time, but I just want to ask you really quick, what's coming up on Meet the Press?
Well, look, the president is at the G7, the economy, and the coming fear of a global recession, the China trade war, that is front and center. We'll be talking to one of the president's chief representatives there. And then, of course, we're delving into the presidential race.
That's a whole other ball of wax. All right, Chuck, thanks so much.
Yes, sir.